Hello, and welcome back to our discussion on media and all of its forms and the ways that it manifests in our daily life. Last time we were here, we discussed media as a concept, sort of an introductory video about the term and its sort of uses and the ways that it exists in our daily lives. This time we're going to pick up with a dissection of an article that I found scrolling through the internet. And we're going to go into some of the things that are present in this article that hopefully will be a sort of primer on how I'd like to continue moving through this channel, at least whenever we actually do engage with some media sources and all the ways that they play on our emotions and play with language to manipulate us and our thoughts and our behaviors ultimately. To begin, I'm going to take a section of an article that I found during a recent scroll through Yahoo News. Pulled from Fortune magazine is the headline, "A Food Crisis is Coming. Here's how we can help American farmers weather the storm." So I feel this is a really current topic that is important to understand and have a good grasp on what's going on. We're all going to be faced with challenges if and when the food supply becomes inflated in cost to an unaffordable degree, or scarcity becomes so widespread that it is ubiquitous and everybody's dealing with these problems. And my goal here is to look at some of the manipulative tactics that guide readers in ways that they may not be aware of when reading articles online. I'll be pointing some things out as I see them. There are many reasons for why I will be speaking about the things that I do here, and I hope to get to explanations for all of this in future installments. But for now, I'd just like to take a piece of news apart and expose a few things. Just roll with me and we'll see where we land. Some of the things that I see and point out will be obvious and others will be less so. So let's take a look. Quote, "The war in Ukraine is impacting the global food supply and agricultural production in a profound and lasting way. Together, Russia and Ukraine provide over 30% of the world's wheat supply, just under 30% of the world's barley supplies, about 15% of the global corn supply, and over 70% of the world's sunflower oil. We also can't forget that so far, millions of Ukrainian citizens have fled their country and are desperately in need of a stable food supply." Okay, so what do we see here? The opening looks plain enough, and it is. The intro statement is sound and makes no hasty assumptions or rash generalizations. The percentages are easily researchable and verifiable. So far, this looks like accurate and integral news reporting. It appears that we have the makings of an informative and straightforward news article. However, the issues arise in the third section. And what I want to point out is subtle, yet it tells a story about what the rest of this article is going to be aimed at. Can you spot the emotional priming in the third statement? Let's look a little bit closer and see what's happening. Take a look at the phrase, quote, "We also can't forget," unquote. I find this to be an interesting choice of words, and they do something very powerful. By using this phrase, the reader may well be brought into a type of relational posture with the author. Regardless of the intent of the author, we're now no longer reading a simple dry news story. And cue emotional priming here. The writer is using language to draw a boundary around what is right and what is wrong. They're deciding this for us. You can think of this as a tactic of gaining an ally in the ranks of those who share your worldview. The way that this is written gives us a sense that if we did forget what the writer is pointing out, that we've somehow made a mistake in our understanding of what's really going on with respect to this massive crisis. This sets up the potential for an emotional response within the reader, which acts as the lure on the spinning end of a line that's about to yank us into full-on thought control. There is a great deal to say on this subject alone, but let's keep digging into the text of the article and see what lies within the next few phrases. Picking back up in the article, so far, millions of Ukrainian citizens have fled their country and are desperately in need of a stable food supply. Now, to be clear, I believe that the current situation between the Ukraine and Russia is absolutely horrific and tragic. None of what I am writing is in any way meant to detract from the truth of the suffering that is happening there right now. Yet, I do wish to make it clear that overwhelmingly, our news media does not do us any service or provide us with an honest and objective telling of facts so that we're able to deal with the hardships that are present in the world to the best of our individual and collective abilities. Now, if the prior emotional priming from the initial section of this article needed any help in being effective, the addition of the phrase "so far" is just the thing to add a level of worry that will ensure the emotional priming takes hold within the reader. The reason this addition has the effect that it does is due to the surrounding context in relation to what follows. We began with a statement about the war in Ukraine and the global food supply. Now, most people do not wish this conflict to continue, and I'm pretty sure that the idea of food shortages is one that many have not ever imagined they would ever see or need to deal with at any moment in their lives. The last statement in this section presents an image of broad-scale suffering that reifies the fear swirling around in the reader's mind about these food shortages and the suffering that actually is going on. I know it's a small thing, but this added "so far" is very subtle and manipulative in its messaging. It can engender feelings of unending struggle, where the wars and the suffering and everything that's happening are only just beginning. So far, what's next? Definitely more hardship. There's more to dig into here, and it's very important to get into it, but we'll have to save some time for the deeper dives on another day. For this next section, I'll be pulling statements which appear to indicate a type of pattern. This pattern should become apparent when we examine the statements back to back. Quote, "Sanctions are rightfully closing Russia's trade with the rest of the world, and Russia has simultaneously suspended fertilizer sales to other countries. For all intents and purposes, the Russian fertilizer market is closed for the foreseeable future. Although American farmers do not buy fertilizer or ingredients from Russia, countries that do will have to start buying from U.S. suppliers, which will force prices even higher. There has never been a clearer example of the U.S. food security being critical to national security." Now, these statements all share something, and it's important to understand just what it is and the likely reason for why it's being done. If we examine each one, we find that they all make a very large, generalizing, and assumptive statement. Some speak in hyperbolic or black and white terms, while others cast an opinion based on an assumed morality that is clearly being held by the author. The term "rightfully," with respect to the closing of Russia's trade with the rest of the world, is casting a moral judgment on the situation and making implicit claims about the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine, which may, to some, not yet be fully settled. The reason that I'm pointing this out has nothing to do with the truth or the validity of the moral stance that's being taken by the author. Rather, I feel that it's important to draw attention to this due to the fact that its inclusion continues to pry this writing away from something that could be called objective, unbiased, fact-based news reporting, and is launching it into the arena of an opinion piece. Again, if we look at the other statements, we see a similar theme present. The phrase, "for all intents and purposes," begs many questions. Whose intents? Whose purposes? Do they really mean all, or are they simply using this to paint a picture? All is a very broad, encompassing term. It's a really bold statement to make, and you better be able to back that up with data if you're going to use it in these ways. Now, this is a statement that removes the burden of proof from the writer regarding whatever they choose to follow up with the statement. We must be careful with language like this. It's meant to obfuscate and generalize while giving the sort of appearance of diligence and thorough investigation of any topic. At a deeper level, it allows for any reader to take this as a type of soundbite and then apply it to their own understanding. What's happened here is that it's distilled a vastly complex and nuanced topic that spans multiple economic systems involving a wide array of countries down into just 2 sentences. I find this not only to be lazy, but it's very dishonest reporting. And if we want to understand what's really going on in reality, we have to ask ourselves, why would the writer choose to include this phrase? Whatever the motive is, its inclusion has driven us further into that area of opinion and definitely overt bias. Returning to the article, quote, "There has never been," unquote. Yeah, nothing like an all or nothing, black and white, hyperbolic statement to send the red flags screaming up the flagpole. Never. Really? Honestly, I find this entire statement to be pretty insulting to the general intelligence of the audience to whom it's written. We need to guard our minds against these kinds of statements. Rarely do they ever carry much truth when looked at with any level of depth or investigation. Think about this. The world has gone to war twice. During those times, food rations were a real issue. It's very simple to understand that if your country does not have enough food to feed its people, then it's not a country anymore. There's no amount of government that will sustain a literal starved nation. As we can see, these kinds of statements are rife with error, and if we weren't yet in opinion land before this point, we've certainly landed at the center of it now. So that's all for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this little dissection. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd like to hear your opinions. Do you agree with anything I've pointed out? Do you think it's way off base? Do you think I'm reading too much into this? I would like to know what people think about how media works. I'd like to know what people see. Yeah, I hope this is informative. I hope you find it interesting. For the next video, we'll continue to dive within this article, possibly a little bit deeper, pointing out some more nuanced subjects, more nuanced concepts. And yeah, that'll start us on a little bit deeper journey to some of the historical stuff that I'd like to get into a little bit later. I hope to see you there.